Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy the Hip Hop Lobbyist. Today I will be doing a video about black men voting this presidential cycle. Now, there have been a lot of conversations between Pastor Jamal Bryant, former President Barack Obama, really every and anybody, Roland Martin, Plies included, about the importance of black men voting this election cycle. And I think that that's a very strong conversation, but the number one thing they're missing is actual data. The thing that these people get, and I get it, they're celebrities, they have titles, they're engaged, and they have a flock of people who listen to every grain of integrity of word they say. The issue is when it comes to politics, they don't know shit. I hate to put it that way, but this is honest and real as I can get. What happens is these pastors, these entertainers, these people, they come to the Capitol, they go to their respective chambers, talk to the Democrats or people that they're more familiar with, and what happens is they live in the vacuum of society where they think they're right. They're going to sell you some nonsense and they never get down to the brass tacks of the issues. And that's why today, in today's video, while you're here, is actually get down to the brass tacks and the issues of black men and their participation this election cycle. Now, I'm going to have some surprising numbers at the end. As you'll see, we'll go through swing states like North Carolina, Georgia. We'll look at Florida and Maryland, and we'll analyze black men historical voting patterns and how they're currently voting as of October 23rd, 2024. Now, these are live voter data, and I'll be using a program called L2 Voter Mapping. I want to say it is the best, hands down. I don't have a link. Actually, I don't have an affiliate program with them, but you'll find a link in the description about their program and what they provide. And what I will say is that L2 is one of the best. Now, there are other data services out there. If you're Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, Green Party, whatever, there are data services out there for you. But this is the one I find most comfortable because out of everything, I feel very comfortable with their data. I can analyze their data and I can use it because unlike a lot of these other people, if you don't know about me, it's your first time here, first time seeing Philip Singleton, the Hip Hop Lobbyist, just know that I'm a professional lobbyist. I've done this for 15 years. I've never wanted to work in politics. I really just fell into it. And from that, I've helped elect members to Congress, elect members to the state legislatures, pass laws, put constitutional amendments on the ballot, and also secure funding in the free state of Florida for black nonprofits serving at-risk youth. I'm talking about mental health, substance abuse, suicide prevention, reading programs, a little bit of everything to help give our kids a second and better chance at life, but not just talking and complaining about reparations and things of that nature. I actually want to deliver, give tangible results from government so we can actually make progress in our communities. That's who I am. That's what it is. And if you like that, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. But for today's video, I'm trying to go raw, unedited, in one cut, straight to you, the people, so you can know and come back tomorrow for another breakdown to see, okay, where black men are actually voting. So on election night, we're not surprised on what's actually happening. So make sure you like and subscribe, tap in, and tomorrow we may just be live streaming on Twitch, Kick, and YouTube with more information. But for today, let's get down to it. So we're going to be using, I think the best thing is I got to switch my scenes over. Oh, there it is. Switch my scene. There we go. I actually recorded this and have to re-record because some of the data was cut off from the screen, and if I was talking about something and you couldn't see what I was talking about, I felt, well, there's no point in publishing that, so let's just start over. So what we have here, L2 data mapping, state of Georgia. We have access to the state of Maryland, North Carolina, Florida, and South Carolina. And what we're going to do is start in the Mecca, Wakanda, Georgia. Now, if you don't know, Georgia is one of the most populous black state in the union. It happens that way. You know, a lot of people found prosperity in Georgia. Now, some scammers, won't even hold you. There are a lot of scammers in the state of Georgia. Buyer beware. They got me for $750 one time, and I stopped using Cash App from them. But that's not today's story. Today's story is the votes. Now, what we have here is the state of Georgia. As you can see, and this nice blue Mecca here, I think that's Wakanda. T'Challa could be there. That is Atlanta. And you see that strong blue dot around Athens, some around Augusta. You see Montgomery, Alabama isn't in it. Dothan, Alabama isn't in it. Valdosta, Georgia's in it because guess what? These are Georgia voters. These are what we're looking at. So you won't see people in Tallahassee, Jacksonville. You see exactly where the line cuts off at. If you are in the state of Georgia, a registered voter, you are here. Now, the 7.4 million you see down here, that is for registered voters. Now, there could be a discrepancy, right? Some people could say, you know, well, I see a higher population. I see more voters somewhere else. Well, guess what? Not all data goes through voter death records. to make sure that, you know, they have the most up-to-date records. Now, I'm not saying every supervisor of elections or every state system does it, but sometimes you got to use data to your best, because a lot of times we'll have people who request ballots, don't live in the state, still on the ballot, still on the rolls, and it kind of throws off the numbers, because what happens is, as a political scientist, a political consultant, someone working with campaigns, what I need is a data service that can give me output, that can give me what I'm looking for voters. So if I'm a Democratic consultant, which I am, it is what it is. Don't judge me. I mean, we're here to learn, right? So get out of the party politics. Let's get down to the brass tacks of it. So state of Georgia, we have Augusta, we have Warren Robins, we have Atlanta, we have a lot of things here. But I think one of the most important things to really characterize and focus on here are the votes, right? So what we have here are likely African American, European, out of the 7.4 million people registered voters. Here's the population of Georgia. You can see in Georgia and every other state, women outpace men voting, point blank and period, right? So you'll see the breakdown here, and you'll see that the data does a lot of things. I can look at your marital status. I can see if you're a veteran. I can check your occupations. And this is if you're a business owner. And I don't want to actually go through and get specific here, because I can really tailor it down to a specific person if I wanted to. Because when you're trying to find people, you're chasing down ballots, you need to find out who actually voted. And sometimes you need to understand, okay, is it worth to go talk to the hip hop lobbyist? Is he a super voter? Is he a voter? Like, do I even need to waste my time? Because there is a thing called $1 per vote. That's a whole other conversation, a whole other video. We're here for black men and their status of voting. So right now we have a male, female. So we already know that men are typically behind. We have 46%, 47%. You can round that up to a men who vote out of registered voters. And this, what you have here is as of 10/23. Today is 10/23, October 23rd, same day. As of early voting numbers. Yes, coming in, we have roughly 1.8, 1.9 million people who've actually voted in the state of Georgia. A big swing state. A state could actually determine the presidential, White House, Congress, and what actually happens, right? So again, we're not in the brass tacks of it. We're in the real tacks of it for what it is. And let's look at what we need first is a base. One thing you always need politically is a base. You need a base to understand what the voting trend is between communities. You can't sit here and talk about, I'm going to go get every black voter, I'm going to talk to black men, if you don't understand the trends of black men and how they vote, right? So what we're going to do here is typically what we look at is super voters. Super voters end up being people who typically vote all the time, right? Every election they're coming up to vote. However, in this situation, you don't want to compare apples to oranges. Hypothetically speaking, or realistically speaking, or however you want to break it down, you don't want to look at a local election and say, okay, here's how they're going to vote in the presidential election. You don't want to look at a mid-year election and say, okay, here's how they're going to vote in the presidential election. You want to look at presidential elections, apples, and compare them to other apples, other presidential elections. So what we have here is a system where, okay, we're looking at general elections, presidential primaries, primary elections, runoff elections, special elections, Democratic primaries, local and municipal. These are too many elections. Republican primaries as well. I forgot to mention them. It is what it is. This is a bipartisan educational video, so don't take it personal. So either way, general election, what we have here is the other years that elections were cast back to 1996, when data really helped start driving a lot of how people reached out to voters and say, okay, I could talk to people who voted out of one of these elections. And one of the past presidential election years, 2020, the Biden year, 2016, the Trump year, 2012, the Obama-Biden re-election year. In 2008, the first black presidential year, Barack Obama's year, 2008. I stuttered there. I know somebody in the comment is going to say something about that. Why did he stutter when Obama, whatever. Doesn't matter. So what we look here is 2 out of 4, right? And I say 2 out of 4. It could be 3 out of 4. It could be 4 out of 4. 4 out of 4 is super hyper, right? It's going to give you super hyper numbers that could be beneficial or hurt you because you're looking at the micro of the micro transactions, right? But for here, we're going to look 2 out of 4. And my reasoning here is this. And look at it as a Kai Cenat, right? In 2008, Kai Cenat was most likely alive, but he couldn't vote. But maybe he could have voted in 2016. Maybe he could have voted in 2012. And not just Kai, but other people. Don't take his age for law right now. But hypothetically speaking, if you weren't 18 in 2008, you couldn't vote. But maybe you voted in 12 and 20, or 12 and 16. Or maybe there's a combination where you voted for Obama and you missed his re-election and Trump got in and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm voting for Biden, right? These are actual people. This is how things actually happen. And what happens is politically, we sit in a room and people tell us, you know what? We registered somebody in 2012. They voted in 2012. But then they also voted in 2018, but then they missed every presidential election. And I think for some odd reason that they're going to vote again this election. Some people like to compare apples to bananas and oranges. I like to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges because that's how I was taught and brought up. CBC, the Congressional Black Caucus Institute, that's what they taught us. And that's what I go by. And I've been successful running elections at the congressional level, the state level, and every level of government based on those principles. So I'm not going to change the principles that the CBCI instituted in me and change how we look after voters or go after voters. So back to the conversation, black male voters, right? How are they turning out this election? Typically, what we look at, the overall populace, we haven't looked at black people specifically yet, is that there's a 57-42 breakdown between those elections. Now, when we look at black people as a whole, likely African Americans, and that's a whole other conversation for this video, maybe another one, we have 1.1 million people here that have voted throughout the Atlanta metro. When you say metro Atlanta, this is what they're talking about. This is comparatively, look at this. This would be from like Jackson County to, this is almost Tallahassee, Atlanta. This is wild. But then you look at this, 36%, 36.8, 37%. Let's round it out, 37%, right? 37% of black men have voted in at least 2 out of those 4 elections. Now you can say, you know what, it's skewed. We're looking at all 4 elections. 37%. To me, that 37%, this 37% is very powerful, right? Because it tells me that if Jamal Bryant, Barack Obama, any of these henchmen, plies, whoever are out here telling you that black men aren't voting, black men, we need you, black men, you need to show up to vote, then you're clearly telling me that, guess what? I voted 37%. I typically voted 37%. For me not showing up to vote, that means I'm voting at 35, 34, 33, 30%, right? But if I'm voting on par, you can't tell me, check me out now, you can't tell me, hey, we need you to vote, because guess what? I'm doing what I normally do. I show up to work, I provide for my family, I put food on the table, I keep things going like a truck in locomotion. I'm going, and guess what? I'm going to do what I got to do. The 37, 38%, right? 37, conservative. Let's round it up, but we're only going to go to 37. We're not going to say 38 because that could skew off numbers. 37%, right? So you tell me that we have to be there. So let's get this down. Look at one, and this is going to be consistent across every state we look at, right, for this video. Let's look at 2008. Let's start there. 37%. Now this is calculating. Boom. 30. And now some people could say, well, these numbers got to be wrong. It's 36.6. So many men showed up, but guess what? How many of these men died from heart disease, cancer, other health related issues? How many people weren't voting? How many people actually moved out of the state of Georgia? Maybe they moved to Arkansas and they're not on the voter rolls, right? That's what you have to account for. People move. God takes people away, unfortunately, sometimes early. Maybe they voted in 8. They're not going to be able to vote this election. I get it. That's the reality of where we live. That's the reality of politics. So understanding that, we have to base it off the numbers. Men lie, women lie. Numbers don't lie. 37%, 2008. Right. And you have to, the thing is, in the political world, you have to take this basis as, who do I talk to? How do I engage? Right. So let's look at 2012. Consistent. L2 is a respected model. 36%. That's right under that 36, 37. We round it up, right? 37%. So that's on average. 2012. That was a re-election year. And there was low turnout, but we still kind of showed up the same. The Trump year. What are we doing in the Trump year? 35%. That was 36. You can round it up. That was a point down. That can make a difference. That was a Trump year, right? I get it completely. 2020, I want to say, was the Warnock year, the Biden year. What do we have here? 38%. So 37, we actually jumped up that's 1.9. That's 1.9%. That's an increase in Biden. And this is, again, I didn't change anything. It's raw, unedited. African-American voters in Georgia, the Mecca, Wakanda forever. And this is what it is. So that's the breakdown. 61-38. So you're trying to tell me that last cycle, more black men voted for Biden, but nobody's talking about that. I actually wrote about that. Nobody wanted to publish it. That black men were voting more for Biden and black men were voting Trump out of office. That's how I structured it. Nobody wanted to run the story, but it's very true. Most likely, I'll post a report on a link or website, whatever. If this gets 100 likes, I'll post that, right? But that's that. So if we're going by these numbers, 38% we did good last time. So that means that we need to do 38% again. Nobody's saying that. We need to show up like we did last time in Georgia. Nobody's saying that. They're saying black men aren't showing up. And that's why we have all these, honestly, these male chauvinistic podcasts out here that are talking about everything from sexualization of women to the quality of a household and these different various, very oddball conversations. A lot of these brothers need help. But all put together, this is what we have, right? This is the community of people that we have that you want to show up to vote. The issue is a year ago, you didn't show up to tell them what was important, right? A year ago, you didn't say anything about a black man's plan for businesses or mental health or teaching or whatever, right? But now all of a sudden, a couple weeks before the election, we realize it's real tight and we need black men to vote more than 37%. And that's why it's a narrative. We say, are black men voting? And that's why I had to make this video to say, hey, what are we actually doing, black men? Brothers. So let's look at black people. You got to make sure the data is consistent. Am I looking at all people or black people? I think I'm looking at all people, right? I got to go back, look at black people. So we're looking at black men of likely voters, and it's got to be 37%. And guess what? It's 38.4%. That would prove that black men in Georgia are voting right now, as of this morning, on the same rate they voted for Joe Biden. They turned out for Joe Biden. Now, I'm not saying they've got, now all these people, clarity, it doesn't tell me who they voted for. It lets me know they voted. But I can take a scientific approach to say, okay, what are the poll numbers coming out of Georgia? What are the poll numbers coming out between Trump, Harris, and take maybe 3 polls and say, you know what, on average, take the averages of this. Let me implement these polls on this turnout. And I can basically base the turnout, say, you know what, out of this 1% increase, maybe 0.5 is actually voting for Trump. How's this helping? How's this hurting? But that's another conversation for another video. So this is what I'm showing in Georgia is we're actually overperforming a little bit, but nobody's Roland Martin and Jamal Bryant's not telling you that, right? And let's look at the ages of these black men. I think that's important. It's something I actually missed on my earlier piece. Where's the age at? Ooh, let's get to the age. Let's look at the black men that are voting. Oh, that ain't it. Let's look at this. 34% over 65. A lot of older black men. These are the civil rights era. They're going to vote. Over 55. You have over 59% of men over 55 that are voted, right? 65 over 50. Now, this is the problem that they're highlighting, right? These people in here. Now, here's the issue, right? They have something in here called, where is it? It's in my voter stuff. It's there, my voter frequency, right? And this is a very powerful tool. 0. These are people who have never cast a ballot. Now, earlier I highlighted 4 out of 4 super voters. These are people who have never cast, 16,000 people, right? These are 16,000 people who have never cast a ballot out of the last 8 elections at least. Let's look at 0 and 1. They've either cast a one. No, let's look at 0. 0, right? And let's look at the age of these brothers who have never voted. And guess what? Some of these brothers are over 55. Some of them are over 50. You have over 36% here that are over the age of 50 voting for the first time. You have, what's this, 31% voting 18 to 24. The narrative is being mixed by the media. Now, this isn't a strong number. These 16,000 people, men who've never voted before or voted for the first time, that's commendable. They voted early. And I think there's a difference. It's a mindset of voters as well. Just a quick sidebar. There's a mindset of voters. Some voters are like shoppers. And you realistically have to think of them that way. Voters are like shoppers. Because in some aspects, let me switch this over. In some aspects, some people like to vote and shop the same way. If I go buy a pair of tennis shoes, I'm going to get some new Jordans. I want to pick it up out of the store, carry it home. Even if I don't wear it the same day, I want to have it in possession. I want to vote and get the results that same night. Some people like to shop on Amazon. They like to order. Hey, it'll be here in 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, 10 days, 2 weeks. Okay, cool. Alibaba, Temu, right? I get it. Free plus no shipping. It is what it is. Some people can sit there and cast a ballot and wait for 2 weeks for the results to come in. People have different mindsets. There are 3 parts of election day. There are 3 parts of an election. Election day, early voting, absentee voting, right? When you really break down those three different cycles of how people vote, that's what determines how you do outreach. So when we're talking about black men, how do black men vote? Are they voting early? Are they voting absentee? Are they voting election day? And really what happens is there has to be a major shift. There would have to be 300,000 black men who come out to vote and vote one particular way to skew this entire thing. But again, we're not a monolith. We all think different, but there's some certain things, certain characteristics we all link towards. But right now, we can basically safely assume that this is a very powerful, very strong movement of new voters who are showing up. And it's a good thing. But it's not as heavy age-wise. I mean, go back to the age. It's not as heavy age-wise as these older voters. And this is what I was saying earlier. Voters die off. In 2 cycles from now, this 65 and over is going to look like this 50 and 50 and over. That's why this 18 to 34 and this 30 to 45, 49 is important. Because that's what translates, right? And that's what we're looking at. Black men in Georgia, the Mecca, Wakanda. That's what they call it, I believe. So let's look. We're looking at black men here. And what's happening here is, from what I'm seeing, in Georgia, we can safely assume we're doing a little better than average. But that narrative isn't out there. Somebody go tell Jamal Bryant he need to go check this voter data, because the theologians never looked at the voter data in Egypt, right? They didn't look through the voter data when they were going through Deuteronomy and Numbers and Joshua and Judges and Luke. So stop judging in Luke these black men, or stop judging these black men, and go look at some voter data. Let's look at another swing state. North Carolina, come on and raise up. Take your shirt off. Leave your shirt on. Leave your shirt on, because guess what? We need y'all to go vote. Black men, we need you to go vote, because guess what? They're telling me that black men in North Carolina are not voting. And I don't believe it, because I know in my heart that we're voting the same way we always vote. When you tell us what's important, when you give us a narrative that we can actually believe in, we're there. The issue is y'all made so much technology, so much AI, so much everything that we can Google what we need to Google. We can go see what we need to see. And that's the issue. So I was in North Carolina earlier. Like I said, I recorded and I made a mistake, so I had to go back and re-record, and this is a re-recording. But luckily, we're getting everything we need here. So as you see, this is North Carolina. We have a little bit of Charlotte. You see the red and blue mix. It's beautiful, isn't it? Purplish, right? That's why it's a purple state. Florida used to be a purple state. Now it's a red state. And now Georgia was a red state, and now it's a purple state. And North Carolina. So you have, and as you can see, Greenville, Columbia, Atlanta. This isn't Knoxville. This isn't all these other places. This is all North Carolina. You have Greensboro, Raleigh, Charlotte, Asheville, wherever you need. So what we're looking at here again, we got to reset individual demographics. We're not looking at political party. We're looking at ethnicity, broad genders, right? Now we could do individual. That's a whole nother concept. We could do individual, and this will be telling, right? You have the likely African American, unknown, Hispanic, Irish, Scot, German. This next census should change all of that for the next election, because they're going to have a breakdown of black voters or black people. If you're from Haiti, you're from Nigeria, you're from Jamaica, you're from any other country in the world, they want to understand who you are in the census. But that's another conversation another day. Let's get into the black voters. So we got to break down the gender here. We see in North Carolina here, that there are roughly 1.5 million, 7 million registered people, 1.5 being black, 4.3 European, roughly 500,000, right under 450,000, Hispanic. Asians around 142,000, others in unknown take around 600, 640,000, 650 if anything, right? So what we have here is the same thing. It's a lot of the same thing. Women outpace men voting. Women care a lot more. This election will be decided by women. Will women break the glass ceiling like they didn't do for Hillary, for Kamala Harris? That is the most pressing question that a lot of women don't want to answer, right? Don't ask me how I'm voting. Ask me, are women going to break the glass ceiling for women, for a black woman? Because we're talking about black men, but we're not talking about the women who actually have the highest propensity of voting and vote higher than men. How is it down to black men come on, man? Are the women gonna vote? Why does it come down to us? Because guess what? It's within the margins. It's within the margins. And they know that if we don't show it, if we don't get that extra point like we did last time with Biden and these swing states, it's gonna hurt. So guess what we have? 46% of men registered to vote here. Let's look at our historical voting history. You know it. We got our primary date. It's from the 23rd. Is that the 23rd? Yep, it's verified for the 23rd. So we're going to be back here tomorrow too. So let's go. General election. Same as we did in Georgia. We're going to look at the primaries. All right. Sorry. We're going to look at the super voters that voted in these elections. Out of that 7 million, what's it going to give me? Out of those, you got to put the data eyes. 4 million. 4356 male to female. You had this likely African American voter population drop to roughly 890,000. Less than 900,000 people voted, which I completely understand, but I get it. So let's look at it. 37%, 38%. So we can round that up roughly, because to me it's, you have this 0.759. This is simple math. I'm rounding all the way up. That's 0.8. No, that's 38. All right. So I have a base of 38%. Right. 38% of black men in North Carolina. Why do I keep saying Virginia? I'm looking at Richmond, and I'm looking at Norfolk, and I see DC up here. But I'm in North Carolina. Take your shirt off, right? All these places in North Carolina we see. But we see that 37, 38% of black men vote. Okay, cool. So just to verify, again, we're going to go back through. We got to look at each individual, because we can't sit here and say, okay, if there's something different. Because in Georgia, if they had a 1% increase, I mean, did we have a 1% increase in North Carolina last time? 38, 39%. That was almost 40%. That was an increase. So we had a 1% increase in the Biden election in 2020. What about in 2016? What do we have there? 37, 38%. Where are we at? 37%. That's about on average. All right. A little below average, I would say. Right there. It's right on the cusp. 37%, I want to say, is really the average of black men, how we vote. Right? 37 again. Right? In 2012. And let's go back to 2008. Is it going to be 39%, or did we get that push? 37. So again, voter rolls, death rolls, and as I showed you earlier, by age in Georgia, a lot of these higher voters are older age. They're civil rights voters. They voted for the first time in the 60s. And that's the ones that are showing up. You don't have to tell them to go vote. They know more elections than you do, right? So that's the realistic part of it. So let's look at early voting, absentee here. Did they vote early? We have 209,000, almost 210, which is really good. But let's look at it. Is it 37%? Oh, sorry. Wait. We almost skewed the numbers. We got to take this out, because you could also compare. Good, that's a good catch there. You could also compare people who voted in those elections, and if they already cast a ballot here, right? I think I'll test that out next. So we have, what do we have here? 316,000, right? A lot higher, but 38%, 38.6. Now I got to check the video, see if that's higher than what I did a minute ago. I've been saying a lot of 38, 37, 38, 37s. I know last Biden election, 2020, 39% almost. So it really did push up like Georgia did. But I want to say we're on par. We're on par. Black men are voting in 2 swing states. They're voting on par to how they typically vote. So this raises another issue, right? Again, this raises another issue. What have your campaigns done to talk to black men? Don't just talk to me about the PPP loans, because guess what? They come to crack down on all those frauds. Don't just talk to me about a one-time check for the coronavirus, the $1,250. I didn't even get one, right? But I think there were 2 checks, maybe $1,500, $1,200. My wife got both of them. I didn't get none. It's okay. But if we're voting on par to how we typically vote, why are you telling us, putting so much stress on black men to vote stronger and more than we had before? The issue is you have all these mixed media narratives. I haven't listened to Jamal Bryant or Roland Martin that much, because guess what? Not to say they're all bought and paid for, but you're focused on other things. You're focused on getting your media brand out there, your YouTube channel views up, and you're just saying whatever is sensationalized, but it never comes with hard down facts of how people vote, because you're taking this, oh, Kamala's doing this and the black male plan, and she has this for this, she has that for that. Guess what? It's not working if we're still voting at the same rate we've always been voting at, 37, 38%. 37, 38% is where we at, okay? This is a swing state of North Carolina and Georgia. We're voting the same. So you can't go tell us, black men, that we need to show up and we're not doing it. We're not supporting the sister. Guess what? We are. We're supporting her the same way we supported her as the vice president. We're supporting her the same way we supported Barack Obama and everybody else on the ballot who's been Democrat or black or whatever it is. But guess what? You're losing people in the shift, because guess what? We realize black men are at the bottom of your hierarchy totem pole. Women and black women are number 1. Gay black men second. You worry about our children. That's why you talk about abortion. That's third, right? And then we're at the bottom of the totem pole under our elderly and our seniors. Guess what? The 55 and 65 who actually vote, right? And those 55 and 65 who are women, they're at the top of the chain. That's why they're running all the DECs and the RECs or whatever it is on both sides of the aisle. Those black women are very passionate about it. But guess what? You need us because it's a close margin within the races. I told people last time, 2020, that race wasn't for us. That race was to split the white vote. That was between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. This race, they're trying to put it on us, but I don't even see it like that. So either way, let's get back to outside of politics. Let me switch my scenes back. I'm actually trying to get better with the OBS thing. Shout out to my boy Non-Tactical Dad. Really pressing me to get out my box and shoot more content. So we're gonna post this live raw edits of this and have it go. I'm gonna chop up some more content for the the shorts or whatever it is. But I just want to actually go through this because I think it's important to actually educate folks on what's actually happening. And tomorrow morning we're gonna do the same. We're gonna post again. We may do a live stream for it to get that and see where it's going, right? So we did North Carolina. We see where it's at. We're voting the same North Carolina, but let's go to Maryland. Let's go up the eastern seaboard a little bit. We're gonna go down to Florida. And what I really want to focus on is in this pocket, there are a lot of electoral college votes, right? There are a lot of electoral college votes, and some people may think that Kamala Harris is playing for the popular vote, which I think a lot of people are from doing the podcast and Charlamagne and Plies and whatever, right? And even sitting down with Uncle Luke. What's the purpose? How does talking to Uncle Luke drive up that 37%? I think that's another question. Let me pull it off, to be honest. How does talking to Charlamagne the God, Fox News, or anybody else shift that 37% to 40 or 45 or the entire population of what's registered to vote? See, that's a problem. We know who votes. Those older pockets of black male voters vote. Those older pockets of black people vote, 50 plus. But you're not talking to anybody younger than 50. I'm 39 years old. There's nothing you're telling me that in the next 10, 11 years, I can sit here and say, yeah, I'm with it. I'm with what the 50 and 60-year-old people talking about. But the 50 and 60-year-old people are focusing on, this is why I started voting in the first place, because they've seen some things that we've never seen for this power of voting. Rewind that back. They've seen some things that we've never seen for this power of voting. My grandfather's 90 years old. I believe he's seen a man get lynched for the power of voting, right? So I'm not going to sit here and say it's not important. Black men, you need to vote. But guess what? We need something to vote for. Because guess what? We're already showing up the same way we always show up. But they're not talking about that. Let's get back to the numbers. All right. I appreciate y'all tapping in. So we're looking at Maryland. I was in Maryland earlier. Like I said earlier, I was in Maryland. I started this. And I realized that my data wasn't showing. Like, imagine me showing you this data. I'm talking about it, but none of it showed up on the video. So now I had to go re-record. And that was a solid 35 minutes. But anyway, we're in Maryland. You can see PG County got a little Baltimore outside of Washington, Annapolis. We're not over here in Dover, Delaware. We're not over here in Richmond, Virginia. You can see it cuts off right at the DC area, and this is, if I can move the map, they not let me move the map? Oh, the map had to reload. How about this? How about we refresh the page? Sometimes you just need a refresh. Like, most black men need a refresh away from all this nonsense that they put in our ear about us voting and not voting. And I get it. Don't think I don't get it. But let's get back to Maryland. We're in Maryland. You see Baltimore, Annapolis, like we said earlier. How about, instead of seeing the map, we know the map. We see what it is. Let's look at these individual demographics. I must open up the wrong thing first. Broad ethnic groupings. Gender by grouping. You see 28% African American population of registered voters. Again, this isn't the population of Maryland. This isn't the population of Georgia or North Carolina. These are registered voters in this database of the system, right? So that's another thing to really take care of. So if you're trying to go through and say, oh, your numbers don't match up, well, are you looking at registration numbers? And even if you go to your supervisor of elections and your Secretary of State's website, is your Secretary of State scouring the death records to make sure, and the moving records to make sure that you don't have duplicates or people who are actually accurate on your rolls? You know, it's just one of those things. Well, I don't make the data. I just follow the data's rules. Either way, we'll get there. Voting history. Let's lock it up again. Before we get to any state to analyze black men and how they vote, we first have to understand the elections that they previously voted in, right? And how the state previously voted, because as we find discrepancies in gender demographics, income demographics, or even neighborhoods and things like that, what ends up happening is we target different. as a political consultant, I realized that in certain areas, it's going to cost me more to move people. It's going to cost me less to move people in more affluent areas. If you're highly educated, if there are a lot of doctors and lawyers in your community, entrepreneurs and things of that nature, it's not going to cost me as much to move you as a voter. But if you're a low propensity voter who has multiple kids, multiple families, multiple jobs, multiple everything just to survive and make ends meet. And I'm not trying to be facetious or funny. I'm trying to be real. When you have that, it's going to cost me more because guess what? I need to convince you to vote because you have a system you're working in. Not a system like the justice system or the crime system or whatever. You're in a system of day to day. I got to matriculate like this because I got to make this, to make the rent, to make the lights, to make the food, to make the kids payroll, day roll, whatever it is, right? Daycare, whatever, right? That's more the issue. So here's where we are. We're looking at voters, 43% men typically vote in the state of Maryland. We're in Maryland here. Likely African American. Let's break it down. What do we get when we look at black men voting in Maryland? And this is at 37%. Now, would you be amazed? How is it? Now, think about this. How is it that black men in 3 different states across the same elections, super voters, how do they typically show up at 37%? Let's look at the age. Let's look at the age of these voters, right? Just like we did in Georgia or North Carolina, one of those states. What do we see? 52% of these voters are over the age of 55. None to 24, because guess what? Remember what I said earlier? Some of them weren't born. Some of them weren't eligible to vote. So what you have here is 685,000 people, 37%. You can't even round up. That's 37 solid, right? That's 37 solid percent. And there it is. So again, look election to election. We got to compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges. Did we have an increase 37 from that 37% during the Biden year? 1.5%. That's a nice jump for the Biden year. We supported Kamala Harris on the ballot before. That's what it tells me, right? I'm not believing the black men not voting narrative. 36.7, and that was a Trump year. That was that little 0.3 could make a difference. That 0.3 can make a difference. It can make a difference for an electoral college. Don't think it can't, even though this is kind of mapped up. You know, okay, 2012, the re-election year, black men voted how they gonna vote. 2008, remember, a lot of these voters are older, 37%. So there's a possibility it was 38, 39, 40%. But if a lot of those voters were 55, 60, 65, 85, 90, they're probably with the Lord. So let's look at, respectfully. So let's look at current. Let's make sure we're focused on black folks, because this is about black male voting. We're going to get to the numbers, like the African American. We haven't looked at comparative, but let's look at 96,000 that they say. And again, this early voting must have just started in Maryland, or the absentees must have just started getting counted, right? Because guess what? 37.6. That's slightly higher. We're like 0.6 higher, which isn't a lot, but it's saying it's something that if these numbers are consistent for the next 2 weeks, next 13 days, most likely it'll be like this on election day. What it really means is that black men are voting how they normally vote. There's nothing in the atmosphere that's saying, you know what, we need to show up more than we did before, more than we did in 2008, more than we did in 2020, more than we did in 2016. The narrative is they're voting against Kamala Harris to vote for Donald Trump. And in reality, I don't think that you've given us anything to vote for in general. That's the problem. We're trying to conflate bad presidential policies, a bad economy, inflation and other issues, woke politics, and scare tactics to tell people that black men are the reason that we need to vote. And if black men don't vote, we're going to be the reason. No, guess what? You're completely wrong with this. They're completely wrong with this narrative. It's 37%. 37%. If black men have typically voted at 37% historically, 38% on the good year, then I need you to, guess what, game plan it 2 years ago, regardless of who's going to be the president. How do we get black men to 39, 40%? What do we need to do to engage black men? We see all these black men on podcasts talking about black women and families and income and financial literacy and generational wealth. And some of these motherfuckers are scamming. But we're not talking about anything to drive them up. How do you know black men want to be teachers? Do they have the patience to be a teacher? My wife is a teacher. Are you sure that black men have the patience to be teachers? Are you sure this is the career field they want to go in? You mean to tell me they could watch Kai Cenat on Twitch and make all these young YouTube stars make money, but you want them to be a teacher? Teach me how to do the next viral dance on TikTok so I can turn that TikTok video into $60,000, because that's what that one video about the damn salary of a teacher, ain't it? Anyway, let's get into Florida. Now, this data is very breakdown. I'm in Florida. This is how it is. You can look at how people, the educational attainment and how they vote, the propensity of that. That could be another video we break down into and really go into the fact of, okay, how are people voting? What are they doing when they're voting? And the breakdowns. I actually want to do one. I'm going to do one about the type of cars people drive. Like, what are the cars people drive when they vote? Is it a Toyota? Is it Chevy? There's a lot of Chevys and a lot of Fords out there. But if you see a black person in a Honda or a Toyota, are they most likely to vote, or the black person in a Chevy and that Challenger? What would you assume? I'm telling you now, it's a Toyota. Bet. Anyway, let's look at Florida. Florida used to be a purple state. It's very red now. You can see this red. It used to be the I-4 corridor is what they want, right? The I-4 corridor is very purple, but down here, purplish red. But up here, it's heavy red. And with the population influx that we've had, it's done a number. So anyway, you can see in Florida, unlike the other states we've looked at, there's a higher Hispanic population here, right? And out of that, we're not talking about party here. That's another conversation. But they vote. But let's look at these 14 million voters, the 21 million people in the state of Florida. Same thing. Women outpace men, 53 to 46. When we're looking at black voters, in the state of Florida, how many we're looking at? Give me 3 million. 2.1. Let's look at 2.1 million black voters in the state of Florida. And again, this isn't population. This is people who have registered to vote, who have registered to vote in Florida, and they've said, you know what, I'm likely black, and they have identified as black. Because these are all things you can choose as an option, or the data will gather, and guess what? They'll tell you. But guess what? Out of registered voters, 43% of them are male. Let's look at the voter history, because again, we could have the register. You can register all day. You can register at a grocery store. They can register anywhere. You can register to vote any day of the week. But when we look at the Biden election in 20, Trump election in 16, the re-election of Obama and Biden in 12, and the election of Obama in 2008. I missed 12 on this one. Got to go back and click it, get this data right. Add it in. How many people, we're getting a lot of people in there. 1.5. But now let's look at the Super Bowl. We got to make it 2 out of 4. Remember, some people weren't eligible to vote, like we saw in the last state. The 18 to 24 or 29 was empty because a lot of them probably didn't vote or didn't have the ability to vote last cycle, right? So it's one of those things. So we're looking at super voters here. Hot damn, guess what? 37%. That's Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Maryland. That means to tell me that in 2 swing states and 1 former swing state, which is actually the 3rd largest state in the country, that 37% is the base of how black men vote. 37% is the base of how black men vote. There's nothing either campaign has done to tell me that we need to be at 39 and 40%. I'm telling you that right now. Right, so let's leave it there. But that's where we at. But let's, again, same process. Ceteris paribus. Let's keep it consistent. Let's look at each individual state. Let's look at 2020. Right. If you like the content, please make sure you like and subscribe. I really do appreciate y'all tapping in. 2020. What do we have? The Biden election. 2.4% higher. 2.4% higher in the Biden election in 2020. Black men showed up. Right, just make sure I ain't tripping. That's likely African American. Okay, that's black. That's black. 2016, the Trump year. What do we have? From 37%, 36. That 0.2. That 0.2 here makes a difference in Florida. I believe that 0.2 drop in Maryland made a difference. That 0.2 drop in North Carolina made a difference. That 0.2 drop in Georgia may have made a difference. And that's how you lose a presidential election. That's why they're saying black men need to vote. But if we're voting at 37% like we've always been doing, I'm quite sure you get it throughout the video. That means that y'all haven't done anything to push that needle up. And that means that there needs to be a deeper conversation with the Democratic National Committee, Byron Donalds with the Republican National Committee, and saying, okay, how are we going to increase that participation number to 40%? Because that 2 or 3% could help really benefit, as you see, both sides. But when black men don't participate, and no 0.2, 0.3, 0.6, then there end up being a couple 100,000 voters. There ends up being a whole White House, a whole Congress, a whole, why are we gridlocked in DC? Because guess what? They know these numbers. They know these numbers. So we're in 16. Let's go at 2012, the re-election year. Likely African American. Let's get these male numbers. What are we talking about? 36. See that 0.2? But Obama won, but it wasn't. Everybody said it wasn't the year that he back. I ain't get my reparations check, yacht. That's another conversation. Anyway, 2008. Let's see how we gotta make it work, right? So 36 points. See, and that could be high. That could have been. And for this situation, let me go back. Let me look at 2004. All right. For this situation, I just want to look at 2004 to see if there was actually a jump. Exactly. See that 34.8%? I haven't validated this in our research today, but I see it. You see it, I see it. That's exactly what I'm saying. 2020, the Chad year in Florida, the ballot, Al Gore, George W. Bush year, right? Black men were roughly 34%. In 2004, which was a re-election for George W. Bush in Florida, I'm about to say that I gotta be 34%, 35%. We've set a base of 37% right now. And now you want more and more and more. And guess what? It took 20 years to get that 3% push. But I think they're thinking that within a month of them putting out a black male's plan, the numbers, I'm not even going to get into this. So let's look at, I'm getting far off topic here. Let's look at right now, where we at today, currently, as we wrap up this video, y'all. How black, oh no, not the unknowns. We need the knowns. We need the knowns, y'all. So let's tap in. 144,000 black people voted. 37% black men. 37% is the standard of how black men vote. In today's video, you've seen how black men are voting in swing states and the most important states that could be a selection, at least on the East Coast. Right? I didn't look at Texas. I'm not going to look at states where I know the numbers just aren't going to work. You feel me? But I think swing states will give us the best thing, but those numbers are pretty consistent. That black men vote at 37%, and what everyone else, these pastors, these other folks, they're telling you that we need to vote more. I get it. Yeah, we need to vote more, but I don't see how we vote more. How do you expect us to vote more when you haven't given us anything to vote for? Anyway, if you like the content, please make sure you like and subscribe. Please leave some comments below. I think, I made this raw. I hope it helps educate some folks, but I'm going to do a live stream tomorrow. We're going to try to get this in. I have some other things to do this weekend, so I can't do every day this week, but we're going to go through, as long as we get some live data, we're going to go through it and see how these states are voting, because we're going to stick it at 37%. I don't see it getting higher than that, but we'll see. I appreciate y'all tapping in. Again, it's the Hip Hop Lobbyist. Be sure to tune in for the next video. Thank you.